welcome to Sprinkle Some Love with a Cause by Trisha Mullin. Today we have Luke here who suffers from IC. Hi Luke, how are you?
Hi. I'm doing okay.
I'm so glad to have you. So I kind of wanted to welcome you on and kind of let everyone know what IC is, or interstititis. Um, did you want to explain what that is to everybody? Or would you like me to?
Well, yeah, I guess you could explain it probably better than I could. I mean,
Well, interstititis is basically like a bladder that is kind of like poison in itself in a way. Every time the urine obviously regenerates, it's toxic to the body in many different ways. And it basically beats up and breaks down your bladder to the point of A, needing a new one, which really isn't an option, or B, all these other issues. And interstititis wasn't even a disease that was known 20 years ago. In the last 15 to 10 years, it's recently become a new thing, a diagnosis. We've gotten treatment plans, we've gotten doctors to identify that there's an issue and be aware that there's an issue. So people that are in their late 20s or 30 and above that have had this most of their life often didn't know what it was when they were growing up as kids, things like that, because they didn't know what it was, the government. So it wasn't, you just got a bad bladder today, or your bladder's acting up, or the random excuses they give without actually having the answer until the answer comes forth.
or diagnosed as overactive bladder or prostatitis in males.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah.
Um,
So for you, what was it that led you to realize that something wasn't right with your bladder?
Okay, this started in my mid to late 30s.
And how old are you currently? Just so the audience can kind of do a numbers there.
Oh, so we can do like a timeline. I am currently 41, like I'll be 42 this year.
Okay, so about 10 to 12 years ago is when things started roughly taking a turn for you.
Right. It was a slow progression. I would want to start by saying for sure.
Okay, and what was the first progression that you noticed? What did you notice as a symptom right away?
Right away, I had noticed that right off I was waking up at night to urinate. It started quite often, and I was like, this is embarrassing, but I was even like bedwetting and stuff like that. And, I had never had a problem with like enuresis
or even with anything like that prior. So obviously at that age and never having a bedwetting issue, you obviously knew that something wasn't right, that was
right. Happening. Like I even potty trained at 3 years old, and I never had. And from there, it was never went back, or never,
Yeah. So definitely we identify that something's not right. So what was your first chain of action for that? Like, who did you go to talk about it? And as a man, were you comfortable going to the doctor to talk about this?
As a man, I'm going to tell you that, men, we have a lot of pride. So I really believe that although IC exists more in women and is diagnosed more in women, I think it's underreported in men. I really do, because it took a lot for me to actually, get to the doctor and start reporting, the symptoms that I'm having. And
sorry.
And I've learned that, you really have to advocate for yourself, and you have to tell them everything, and you can't expect them to guess, and you you really have to push for them to find answers. I mean, really have to push.
You do, as an individual with IC who doctors just, even when you're pushing, you have it's hard to make a good impact if you're not pushing at a doctor who knows what IC is. That was the hardest part for me with all the pushing, because I can be a pushy person, but if I'm pushing at the wrong door, it doesn't matter how hard I push.
It doesn't matter how hard you push if you're even barking up the wrong tree. And men tend to be real private about it, and have a lot of, like I said, we have a lot of pride generally. And in addition to the pride, like with men, we on the other side of it, beyond our own masculinity, there's the issue of just like we're encouraged to just like suck it up or man up, or you hear a
Yeah.
lot of that.
Yeah, so
you
tell
know
me a little bit about that. Have you experienced that yourself ever?
oh yeah, yeah, that's just like the existence of adult, or like manhood. um
Well, did you ever experience it like from a doctor where they were just trying to like brush it off before you were able to get your diagnosis? And how did you get your
oh yeah,
diagnosis?
in fact, the first one I talked to, I ended up having to establish care somewhere else because he was entirely dismissive
Okay. That's what I want to get
of
to, because
everything.
that's the
Yeah.
trials and tribulations I really want to shine light on, that as the IC patients go through. Females do, but males deal with it way more because of exactly what you said. The whole man it up, you're gonna be fine, nothing's wrong with you, or you're hypochondriac, or the other things you named like overactive bladder, or there's several different things they cross it off as. So those are those
Mhm.
experiences that we deal with. They shape us, or they shape us to a point to where we overcome those walls, because I feel like they're barriers they're putting in our way. It would, if they could have just helped us at that moment instead of say those type
Yeah,
of
it's all,
comments.
yeah.
So how did you overcome those barriers? If people are telling you nothing's wrong, you're a man up, you got this, you're just overly active bladder, it'll be fine, just keep on peeing 100 times, it's gonna be okay. Like
Right, like
like when how did you overcome that? Like how did you say like no, the heck, it's not fine, and somebody's gonna help me? And like when did you, like what led you to that experience?
well, okay, so I want to add that I have a chronic history of kidney stones. As we speak right now, according to the CT scan, I have 4 small stones remaining, and I've passed about 4 stones.
Do you know the
You
type
know,
of stone you have?
I don't know if they're calcium oxalate or if they're uric acid or if they're from salt. I had actually had one to bring it in, but like by the time I had told my doctor I had it and got it to the doctor's office, it was too late to do any testing.
Okay. So definitely. So I have a chart I'll send you later that also shows like the different types. And I actually just recently got this chart, and I was only like aware of a couple types, but this chart shows like all these other rare types too, and what they look like, and their actual pictures to identify like how you can look at them and tell. And that's important to learn for anybody who has kidney stones, because kidney stones are a built up of something in your body basically that's finding a way to push through, and it's not supposed to be there. It's an obviously a foreign object, because that shouldn't be building up, like whether it's calcium, uric acid, whatever vitamin or mineral is building up to create the solid, which becomes the stone. So determine, in order to get rid of that, you definitely need to know what type it is, because that's how you would treat it. um, so to understand your treatment for your kidney stones, and to be able to, yes, just passing them is one option, but if you don't want them to continue to come back, you have to figure out how you got them, so you can fix whatever is off or unbalanced in your body. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So Why do you have kidney stones? Did they tell you yet, or are you undiagnosed on that particular end? You just know there's stones.
I'm just diagnosed with the stones that they don't know why. And again, it's another thing where they just kind of shrug at me. You know, they'd want me to bring one in, or they'd want me to, and they want me to pass them. Um, I'm on Flomax for that.
Okay.
Uh, and I'm on overactive bladder medication. But anyway,
Are you taking
and they want me
Almiron?
to pass. I'm sorry?
Are you taking Almiron?
No, it's oxybutynin.
Okay, I was on that as well. The red ones? Are they red or green? The
Um,
oxybutins. That just determines which manufacturer.
I don't know from what they are that they are definitely white
Oh,
pills.
yours are white? Oh, wow.
Yes, they're 10 milligrams of oxybutynin, which I almost feel like they're causing me urinary retention, but in the same sense, like I've had like retention and hesitancy before. But you asked me, like, what led me to just be like, okay, this is not okay.
Yes.
Is just the progression, like my symptoms getting progressively worse, and they have, and they will.
So at this point, after you identified that this wasn't okay, how did you obtain a diagnosis? What doctor helped you accomplish that?
Well, I want to start by saying it was a long process. Like mine is a diagnosis of elimination.
Okay.
Um,
So share
oh,
that. I'm
okay,
open to hear the full journey, regardless of what it is, if you're willing to share.
okay. It really is a long story because um, I went to another doctor and she was like, okay, well, she was more like to listen to me, you know, and I had a CT scan, and they said it was unremarkable at the ER with the stones, other than the fact that I had bladder wall thickening.
Okay.
That they had noted that my diffused bladder wall was demonstrating thickening. Okay, because a lot of people may not know this, but at times everyone's kind of different with this, but I see incontinence as part of it, and the other part is that sometimes it doesn't obey you when you tell it to pee, or you don't get fully empty,
Yes.
when it's time to pee,
Yeah,
to
it's kind of like a
urinate.
full cup of
Um,
water. If you tried to dump it, you can only dump it in segments, only 25 like percent at a time. You could never dump the full cup, even if the cup is full. So even if your bladder's full, you could never actually empty the bladder fully. Like your brain will tell you it's full at half full. Your brain will tell you it's full at like whatever level. The signals are kind of like messed up or crossed. So you never really know how much you have to pee when you pee. You could feel like you got to pee a river and you go in there and it's like 10 drops.
and it's just like a few little drops,
Yeah.
or you strain to go and you just get these drops out,
Yeah, like a
and so
constipation.
later you might ignore the urge and totally pee your pants like you really did have to do.
Yeah, like this time it wasn't playing a trick on me and I held it so
Like there
long.
wasn't joking with you this time, so it really is almost like I could, it's hard to describe, but it's like being blind
It
and
is.
trying to feel what is going on in your bladder.
Yeah, your senses are definitely different when you aren't able to like if you couldn't see your hearing and other senses. So I think I get what you're saying, but definitely those senses are definitely more keyed. You have to pay attention to them, and then when you do, it's always not right. So there's really no clear, solid regimen or order to operation with the bladder. It just is absolutely crazy. It does what it wants, when it wants, how it wants. You can literally be like, "Oh, I'm fine. I went to the bathroom. I tried to pee." We take a walk on the trail, and I get like a cold brush of wind, and all of a sudden I have to pee a river.
I relate so much. Like it's not even funny. Like, and the other thing is it alienates you from others because even your own family won't understand. It's only other ICers
It is. And that is
that
why I do what
get
I
it.
do, because I feel like there's so many diseases that I relate to so many people on because I suffer with all of these. And the only positive out of them is to be able to relate to others and let them know, like, hey, you guys aren't alone. And like you can live a perfectly normal life to a good extent of what you are okay with normal. Like my normal, I don't consider to be everyone else's normal. Like to me, everything we're talking about is completely normal. Like that's why I'm able to laugh about it and just have a conversation, because to me, I've accepted it. It's normal for me. I am who I am. Everything that is right in the world is backwards with me. And that's how I've always come with up with like the thought. And like sometimes being
Mhm.
backwards isn't so crazy. Like Einstein. Einstein, everyone in his generation thought he was a madman. And look at that madman. He turned out to be the brilliantest man between him and Elon Musk, and like you know what I mean, like, but if you look at just one person's perspective or two people's perspective of what normal is, then we start to like debuild yourself, like you break yourself down. And I'm not for that. I'm for building myself. And I feel like all of these unique traits that are so different make me who I am, but at the same time, like being backwards is a good at times. Like I feel like I'm able to help so many people with dealing with this. I'm able to communicate with people because I understand the order to operation in the backwards world of these diseases. Nothing operates the way that it should. But if you learn the way that it does operate and not the way that it should, if we quit focusing on the should and we start focusing on what is, then we can figure out the pattern and the order of operation and try to fix those
Within
things.
the disease itself.
Yes, within each disease itself, correct. So if you're getting where I'm going for the audience and you've stayed caught up all the way till now, then yes, you can definitely start to self manage each disease based on learning and identifying with your body. But the only way to do that is to accept your body as what it is, and not what people consider normal and what should be. And that's why I often surround myself around a lot of other people who are in similar conditions with me or understand these battles, because those are the people that fully understand the struggle with the good days and the bad days. And when you're having a really good day, they're the ones that are like truly happy for you because they know how hard it is to have those good days.
Yeah, they really know, you know, how big that is, and what it means to us.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I have to go to the bathroom real quick, but I'll be right back.
All right, I will put you on. You can stay on hold. If you want, you can mute your mic, and I will start a little conversation for the audience and a little bit about what I see is and how it affects us and surgeries that we have to have. So, basically, I know over myself, over time, I've had a couple different surgeries, but when we were going in for mine, I didn't have to have like a bladder surgery all in one by itself. We kind of just added it on top of my other surgeries for like endometriosis or tumors or cyst or fibroids or other things that were actually going on at that time. But I know that I did have like a clamp on my bladder, and I've had a few adjustments to my bladder. So that's helped me over the years. And then there was two pieces of skin that it's called a bowel atom. I don't know how I'll spell what it is when he gets on and tell him a little bit more about this. But these two procedures I had, and they did help my bladder for interstititis quite a bit. But at the time, the interstititis wasn't my number one problem. So I was focused on a lot of other issues at that time, and those end of the surgeries didn't help as much. But I did receive some relief. Are you back with us?
So I heard you had a clamp on. I'm back.
Yeah, so basically I had a couple surgeries I had wrote down on some papers when I was going through my medical files because I didn't really understand all the surgery as I had over the years. And I wrote these two down, and one was a bowel omentum, and that is like a piece of skin that connects your stomach and your liver somehow. And I don't know if it's the nerves or what exactly they did in that surgery or what exactly that surgery even is. But I had that, and then I had another one called a bowel and pelvis, OBITERATED something. And when I had these things done, to inside, like they helped. And then my bladder, my pelvis wall dropped, and they had to lift my pelvis wall, my bladder, and put like not an actual sling in, because when you build your pelvis wall back up, obviously you can't put the sling on top of that. But they did build something within, and I didn't really understand what all of that was when my pelvis wall dropped to help hold my uterus and stuff up. But that also helped because at that time, when I had these three operations, I had stopped having a lot of like the bladder, the bedwetting or the bladder leaking, where you would leak randomly without control.
So you had the bedwetting too?
I did for many years. I had it. Well, my IC started for me when I was a child, and at that time they actually called it bedwetting, and I had a kidney issue at that time. I had an extra valve on my kidney, and the body wasn't using the dead end valve, so only one of my kidneys was working at the time. So they kept blaming my bladder issues on my kidneys
On the kidney.
and on bedwetting, and kept saying after a certain age they'll grow out of it. It's just bedwetting. Get her like that little pad with the alarm. Get her this. Make her do that. You know, put her in timeout. All the good tricks to the trade for the bedwetting condition. But as I
Mm-hmm.
grew out of bedwetting and I started spending the night at like friends' house, I realized I still wet the bed and they don't. And like I'm going into a higher and higher grade. And like I always just thought it was normal that when you go to bed, you just can't control that. And when you wake up, you wet the bed, you change everything. Like you just, it's normal. Like no, who can
Yeah.
control their bladder when they're asleep? Come on. So I just never knew that it was
Uh-huh.
a real a problem until I got to of an age where the doctors realized, wait, she's still doing that? Oh, no, 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 no. We got to get her in somewhere. And then
Yeah.
for years it was she must have a UTI, but we're just not seeing it. She must have a bladder infection, but the bacteria is not strong enough. But her little body, because of all her other immune stuff, is catching like the symptoms before the lab is testing it. Or we're just not sure what's going on with her. She just must be drinking a lot. Does she have diabetes? Is she drinking a lot? That's why she's peeing a lot. How much are you feeding her in beverages? You know, and what's her
Oh yeah.
consumption? Is it her diet? Maybe that beverage isn't working with her. Switch what she's drinking. Cut all pops off. Maybe it's the caffeine. Like we went through all of these what ifs, and then eventually I just said, you know what? Somehow or another, I started like waking up, and at some point or another, the bedwetting went away, but all of the other problems didn't. But the doctors didn't care as long as I didn't pee the bed at night. Like the rest of it was okay to deal with. And
Then they were like, okay, it stopped.
like
Like,
problem
we're good.
solved,
Yeah. Yeah.
good, we cured you. And then years later, as I become an adult, I found out about like different medical issues while pregnant. And then after I had the baby, I was sent to some specialists. And those specialists then determined that I also had IC amongst a long list of other things. And then we just started tackling them all together at once. So I kind of just went from a no treatment, from running to doctors to like 7 days a week of treatment for any surgeries every 3 months, like for years, till I ran, and then I would quit it all, run, and then I would be like, you know what? I can't run no more. My body's gonna die. I'm going back. And then I would go back and cave and do it again, and then I'd be like, no, screw that. I'm done. It's making me sicker. Like it makes me good for some time, but then I go right back sick. So it's kind of like an upper and a downer all at once. So you hop in so happy, and you leave
Yeah.
running like with your running shoes.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So over years, and every time we had surgery while we were in there, of course, the doctor wanted to maximize his potential for earnings. So he would take advantage of the IC. And for women at our gynecologist, they now have like IC doctors at the locations out here in Michigan, and you can get it all taken care of at one facility. So whenever they're already going in for like endometriosis or adenomyosis or whatever, they can also now do that and fix your bladder and do this. Or when you're having the baby and having a C-section, we can go ahead and fix your bladder and tidy that on up for you. So women actually have a true advantage with IC because we have gynecologists. What do men have for, I mean, you guys aren't having babies, so, and there's no penis doctor. We have a vagina doctor. So what doctor is maintaining your IC if it's not a vagina doctor?
It would have to be a urologist, and it would have to be one that really knows IC, and you'd basically have to go through the elimination, like your prostate's good. I had a cystoscopy. Um, they said, okay, your bladder's normal. Even though like my kidneys GFR, I was told by my doctor, because I had asked my doctor, like, why is my bladder wall thickening, like,
So did they
in the
answer that?
absence of my prostate being,
Did they ever answer that? Because my bladder wall was thick as well before, and we never figured out why. And when you said that earlier, my antenna went ding ding ding, and I'm waiting to hear the answer to that. What was the verdict on why it was thickening?
okay, so I don't know if they still really totally know. But I asked her this question, why is it thickening? And that's when I find out. She tells me, well, your kidney's GFR, which is granular filtration rate, is reduced. She said you're not in any danger, but it's at about 75%.
I have kidney
Which
disease, so that makes sense.
75% is at like stage 2 chronic kidney
Yep,
disease.
I have
I
kidney
found
disease.
out by definition.
So that makes sense why we never found out, because I did later go to the kidney doctor, but he never told me that had to some like that's that they were related. So I do have kidney
Right.
disease as well. Mine was in stage 3 AG1 in 2018 and 19, the beginning. And then in 2020 and 21, it's just stage 3, not GA1 anymore. But mine will stay with permanent damage in stage 3 in the one good kidney that I have, and the other kidney I have has disease, but it has the extra valve that doesn't, so it chooses when to work and when not to work. But even when it works, it's filled with kidney disease as well. So
Oh man.
it's not going to make or break the situation. So it's kind of like I have only like a half one kidney. Like, it's confusing on how it works, because it's like the other kidney sometimes is just completely out of commission. And since it's stage 3, your kidneys are already to a point of with mine is permanent damage. So there's no reverting it. Like, I can't revert back. So is yours reversible at this point? Because I know before mine was permanent damage, because I had issues up and down before, but I was always able to get rid of them as long as I maintained my autoimmune diseases like lupus. But once I had a surgery that went wrong and became like a staph infection, which permanently damaged the kidneys and caused the kidney disease, once that permanent damage is there, you can't revert. Is yours reversible or fixable depending on your actual cause? Have they told you your cause of kidney disease? Your kidney disease is probably what's causing your kidney stones too. That's probably the cause.
Right. I think it's all related. So they never told me, okay, like this is the cause. They said you need to drink more water because of the kidney stones, and because she told me when the kidneys aren't getting enough water, they start spilling like ugly stuff. So they have me drinking 2 liters of water a day, and they want people with IC to drink a lot of water, but for 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 someone with IC to get that much water through you in a day, I mean, your bladder is overactive as it is, and I
Right. So can I
have to
give
like drink
you
it in small.
my thought of what I did? Because I vomited all that water up and I peed it all up and it didn't help me. Like, I literally vomited that. There's so much water. It's like water drowned in you with IC. You can't do that. Like, it's just not humanly possible to drink 2 gallons or a 2 liter of water a day with IC. Like, that's like poisoning yourself. Like, truthfully. So what I do is, it's all about your electrolytes. You know the IV that they give you with the solution in your arm, and Yeah, it's
Yeah.
basically similar to that, but you get Gatorades that are specifically made for these things, and they sell them on Amazon. Another lady of mine in a podcast gives the actual name, but there's like a D3, there's like D4, there's vitamin like it's G3, G4, G stuff, and there's different codes with the Gatorades I learned. And those D3s and D other things have different, there's different, all these different Gatorade step their game up, okay? So there's all these different ones that have different vitamins in them, different minerals, more electrolytes, more of this, protein, vitamin B12. Like depending on what your body is needing right now with electrolytes, Gatorade is definitely your go-to. And there is a couple other like generic ones that she talks about that she's done over the years. She's a gastroparesis patient though, but for us, we get dehydrated and malnutrition very quickly, and holding any liquids down is hard. So holding down all that water is hard. That's why we throw it up.
It's so hard, and you know, I've experienced nausea. Um, like I've experienced diarrhea in the past, but like now it's like a lot of constipation. So they had told me that it was unremarkable um, with the CT scan, other than the kidney stones and the bladder wall thickening. And then later, like I was experiencing this like pelvic disc that I've been and like around like my stomach, and I have chronic pain on my lower left quadrant for whatever reason. Like it's really bad, and it's basically all the time. And you know uh so she had said, okay, let me look at your CT scan again with the contrast dye and all that. And I found out that I have some diverticulosis,
Okay.
and that's what brought me to the colonoscopy, which like I haven't done yet, and I don't have the results for. But I do know that like or I've heard that it like a lot of times IC is paired with IBS
Yeah,
or
I have IBS too
something.
next, and that could be also why I did have some of those bowel things. But the IBS is hand in hand with that because it's one long system and it's a nerve. It's the same nerves that send and receive the signals, and it's the same system in a way. Even though they're two separate organs, they're connected by the same tissues. And I believe that that is part of why some of those tissues were removed in between the organs that I had, as those were called. When you look it up, it's a piece of tissue literally that they remove, and it's basically detaching one organ from the other. So basically, a disease can't travel from one organ to the other anymore. It stays confined on its own little island type of thing with the one disease because there's nothing
Oh,
connecting the
because they have
island.
relationships, right? The bladder and the bowel. Like,
Yeah, so you're removing those pieces of skin that actually have those relations. So think about like an island with a bridge over, and if you remove the bridge, no one can get off the island, other than through the nervous system, which the disease can't travel through. So then you're back at good square one. It can only travel through like tissues. So I believe that that's why I have, but don't quote me. But I believe that's why I
okay,
had those removed. But I never understood, and I'm still not 100% sure. But that's the only logic that I've medically come up with. And since then, that has worked. Each disease in itself, when flaring, and so for instance, I have like so many diseases. So when you have one disease and it flares, if you have other diseases, it often causes those to go in a flare. So you have a ripple effect of flare after flare after flare, and then they're all like opening and closing the flares around the same time because they're all like a ripple effect. So during that time, my whole body just goes crazy. Well, when you disconnect certain things, those ripple effects can't continue either, if that makes sense.
yeah, that makes sense to me.
Okay. I just want to make sure I'm not losing. So, I mean, I'm still learning about why,
But
but
you're not losing. It might be a lot for the listeners, but I get it to where you're saying that when one flares up, it'll flare the other, and
it'll
vice
continue.
versa.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. So, have you ever had any surgeries for your bladder or like in pertaining to like to help this situation?
No, and like you mentioned, the males don't have the same resources. We don't have PP doctors, or I
Right.
don't know, like
Right, that's what I said. Like, where do
you
you
know.
guys go? Like, I just really wouldn't know. I know I go to the gynecologist. I have the option for a urologist, but most of the time I was chose the gynecologist because all of my other diseases were also at the time at that same place. So why go to more places than you have to? You know what I mean? So it was like a kill two birds for one stone ordeal. But at the long run, now I'm no longer dealing with those other issues, and I do need another urologist because I don't want a gynecologist, but I still don't know where to turn. So I definitely will be looking for a urologist, and I'll be using your advice because I want one that has a universal opinion on everything, and not just the woman's opinion. I want someone who knows the disease as a whole, and not just how it affects women. Because I feel like we're kind of
Unfortunately, it's poorly understood disease. At this point, they've just it's kind of young disease, so they've just barely recognized it as an umbrella. Because everyone's a little different, but it sounds like we're a lot similar. But
right. Everyone does have
um,
their own case, and there are a few that are similar out there just because that's just how the body works. But I do believe with this, IBS is connected. I believe for females, endometriosis and other female gynecological issues are related. That's why it's also placed at a gynecologist's office.
they're called like twin sisters. So and
Mm-hmm.
it's more recognizable in females, is what I'm saying. In women.
Yes, it is more easier to tell and recognize in females only because, for instance, endometriosis and like all of these other nerve diseases are treated by the same doctor now who treats these that so they know what they're looking for. So if I told you that like an animal, for instance, like a bear, if you never knew what a bear was and I pointed to a fish and told you it was a bear, you would believe me because you don't know what a bear is. So it could be standing in front of you and you wouldn't know what it is. So these doctors know what it is, so when it's looking them straight in the face, they're able to identify, oh, this patient has IC, send her over to this department and give her a referral while we're working with her because they know what they're looking at while we're already there. In order for a man to get that type of treatment, he has to have an issue, identify it's an issue, call it out it's an issue, find a doctor to address that issue, go in and start trying to figure out, will this doctor even know what the issue is, and will this doctor, once you figure out what IC is, well, because obviously as a patient, we don't know what's wrong with our body when we go to a doctor. We didn't even know what IC was, probably like when we were trying to figure
I
out what
didn't
IC
even know
was.
what IC was before all of this
Right. So it's not like,
myself.
right. It's the whole thing of bear. Like if I told you it was a bear, you wouldn't know because we've never knew. So we can't look for something we don't know as the patients. And it's hard to find a doctor who also knows. So we're both blinded in the medical field and as patients. And there's only a few doctors with good positive insight on this. And if they're in your area jurisdiction and your insurance laws and what's your state guidelines, and now you're crossing all these red flags just to get good treatment. You feel me? Like,
And not some people don't even get their diagnosis. Some people don't get treatment for it, like you said, depending on what your insurance covers and whether they deem it medical necessity. And
right.
you know
Is that doctor in your jurisdiction? What are the fees? Because doctors that aren't in your
yes.
insurance jurisdiction are twice as much money for out of pocket expenses for those who pay for insurance. Like there is a million deductibles that you're literally the location of the doctor changes the whole scenario of whether you can or can't even be provided service from that doctor.
And you have to advocate for yourself, and as as a patient, like I can tell you, and as an IC sufferer, it's difficult to advocate for yourself. You feel like crap, like you don't have any energy. You never feel like it. I don't know, and to insist on them that like I'm sick, like something's wrong, and they just think you're a hypochondriac for a long time, and I don't know until they start really finding some stuff.
Yes, I totally agree with you, and I kind of have a hypothesis I want to run across you. So For the basic knowledge, they say IC is almost like a bacteria. It runs and acts like a bacteria, but they physically can't see or test a bacteria. Correct?
Correct.
Okay, maybe.
There is always traces of blood in my urine. No,
Correct.
and they don't know why.
Nope. They say it's from the bladder wall. The thickening wall that's shedding is what that's from. Just like as if you were a cannabis user, you shed your cannabis from the wall of your bladder, which contains the THC when you're testing positive in a urine test. It's the actual bladder wall tissues that are making you test positive. And since yours are thicker, they're going to always be shedding and constantly replenishing a new one. And that's kind of the same way a period in a female operates with the uterus, but now your body's
Mm.
going through that. So it's kind of like a period without blood, vaginal bleeding though, 24/7 with, and the hormones that come with and play with that are important as well because your body digests hormones. And on your period, women get what they call PMS, right? Well, your bladder is related
Mm.
to all of those, so there's a small version of PMS. So you'll notice during a flare, your PMS, whether it's a period or not, has intensified, whether you're a male or female, because those are kind of in one. Not only that, but that bladder and that the bacteria that they're detecting but not detecting. Again, like I said, if you didn't know what a bear was and I told you a fish was a bear, you feel me? I feel it's a species they have yet to identify. So that's why they don't know. They can't point at it and say what it is because they don't know. And I don't know if you've
Eh,
ever heard of urea plasma, but it is the smallest living organism that attaches itself to a white blood cell, and it's literally looks like a white blood cell under a microscope. That unless you adjust your microscope scientifically to be able to it, and you actually know what you're looking for, could you find it? And the only way they found that out was years and years ago, and literally that is so common out here, and so many people don't even know what it is or how it works or nothing. And honestly, if you can tell me that that's there, you should be able to adjust these microscopes to find something because you have all the evidence you need, just not the right answers yet. And I feel like it's more or less with knowing what you're looking for, just like what I said, I point and identifying. And they don't know what they're looking for yet, but it's right in front of them, but no one really knows what the heck they're looking at. Doctor wise, like meta scientific wise, okay, not doctor wise, scientific wise, because until science changed, could the doctors then incorporate the new changes? So
right, right.
it's not really doctor per se, it's scientist and the science behind it. I feel that the scientists aren't identifying the species of bacteria, just like we didn't know what COVID was, but they identified what that was and what species it was. I definitely feel like there's just not enough funding in identifying what bacteria level or species it is because um for instance, like after I went septic and after I've had like multiple infections, they've like had to, like I had inflammatory pelvis infection disease as well, and they literally have cleaned all my blood multiple times, put it back in, and afterwards my bladder is like the best from there on for so
Oh,
long.
really?
Yes, and when I do something with my blood and I clean and filter my antibodies, my bladder feels better. But then when my body goes starts going back down or one of those other diseases flare, I'm back in this trend and this set and I'm back over here. Like I'm back on this island. Dang it, I thought I got off. Okay, what do I got to do now? So I do the bladder cocktails. I don't know if you've ever done those, which is where you get the catheter.
Installations.
Yeah, they call them, in some states they call them cocktails, some states they call them installation, but it's basically a catheter
Hmm.
where you get the marvicaine injected, which is a fluid, into your bladder, and it numbs the bladder wall and it clears it all up and helps you. And you leave it in there for as long as possible, and then you urine when you have to, and you go. You do that one time a week or two times a week based on your conditions, or once a month. Like it depends on your condition and stages for IC. Have you ever participated in that program or treatment?
I have the effects are I mean it feels amazing in the bladder, but unfortunately I found them to be very temporary.
Yes, only for a couple hours, the day or the night. How long for you would you say that the relief lasted after an installation?
Maybe like for a couple hours, after I urinated out.
Okay. So once it's
You
out,
know,
it's out. It's gone until the
once
next.
it's out, and then we start going back to.
Yeah, once we fill her back up, the bladder. Once we fill the bladder back up, then it's over. Because once I start peeing out that new
Yeah, it's
pee, it's
over,
that
and
that.
I'm back to square one.
Yup. So how often would you do those then? When you were trying those as an option?
You know, maybe every couple of weeks I'd get another one. Every 4 weeks.
Okay, so like once a month.
Yeah.
Okay. I know when I was doing them every like 3 days. I was doing it Monday,
And
Wednesdays,
some
and
people
Fridays.
do. Some people have them often, you
Yeah,
know.
but it didn't help no longer, and it's still all that stuff I went through and I thought I was like my whole goal in my early 20s when I was doing that was if I do this, I'll get rid of this and I'll be able to move on, and this too shall pass. But it's kind of like, no, you're going to do this and you'll be back here next week for it again. And there is no this too shall pass. It's more or less like you're either going to do it or you're not. And you're going to learn to live with it or you're not. And I kind of, once I got off all of those, I realized Elmeron wasn't really doing me very good. Did you have any side effects on Elmeron?
I had researched it, and I opted out of Elmeron. Um,
Lucky you, because there's a lawsuit now for the Elmeron, and there's all these issues with the vision and all these issues with it for sure.
yeah, it really is like it has been with like vision problems. Um, and listen, I heard it's like kind of like a bad medicine. So like who knows? It could be something that really helps me. But from everything I heard and from the
Honestly, I
lawsuits,
didn't feel any relief. They had me taking it 3 times a day for a few years straight, and I didn't feel really any relief. But in my head, I was telling myself, like, I need to do all of this. I need to. And once I do all of this, it'll get better and it'll be okay. And I kind of realized that even on days I missed it, and even once it was gone, like I feel now the same way like I did then, minus as much urine because of like some of the surgeries I had. But if it wouldn't have been for some of the surgeries I had, everything is pretty much the same. I still feel the same pain. I still feel the same burning. So, like, the cocktails and all would be great right now. But at the same time, getting back
but
on that regimen is so hard to get off because once you get a grasp of relief, it's kind of addictive. You really want to continue that relief. You want to go back to what they consider normal because now you remember what it is, and you're like, oh shit, I want that. Like, okay, let's drop it. We can go 3 times a week. That'll be fine. Okay, 2 times. How many times? What's the insurance gonna cover? Like we're trying to figure out the maximum amount. And like you want that relief. So it becomes like a ritual. And then when you're without it, you really feel this like even different. So now that I've gone years and
well,
years.
and it affects you at all times. Like I don't know about you, but even when I'm not in a flare, um, I even at my best, I always am nagged by my bladder. I always at all times know that I have a bladder.
Yes, right now mine is hurting and aching and it's trying to tell me I have to pee, but I don't. I went like 5 times before the podcast to make sure that I didn't have to go during the podcast. And now it's trying to tell me you just might, but I know I really don't. Like,
Mine
and
is telling me I have to, but I don't know.
like right, but I don't know. But I notice when I'm under anxiety or pressure or I'm doing certain things, those nerves tend to trick signals. And I really don't have to pee. It's just my brain and my nerves right now because
It's just your
I'm
brain
nervous.
telling you that you have to. So I mean, it really is like you know, and I think you just get labeled as a high maintenance patient with a lot of doctors, and especially men, like, they probably just, roll their eyes when you leave, and it just feels really, I don't know.
It's
It takes a
embarrassing
lot
and
of
it's
pushing
hard.
to even so much as get a diagnosis.
So how long you said for 12 years now you've had your diagnosis? How many doctors would you say you've gone through that you like?
No, I'm very newly diagnosed,
Oh, okay. When did
but
you get your
like,
diagnosis? I missed that. I'm sorry.
yeah, because I've only, been diagnosed for like a year, and
Oh, but your
and
symptoms
even at
started
that,
then. I'm sorry. I correct myself. I recall now. Your symptoms started 12 years ago. So you did get your diagnosis a year. How long? How many doctors did you go through
right, like my
before?
symptoms started, you know,
Yeah, I got it. How long? How many doctors did you go through before getting your diagnosis?
like I went through about like that's why I said it's a long story because I went through like 5, 6 doctors. They said it was prostatitis, that they were suspicious of the prostate, and I mean they had done the scans, like the CT scans, and I was like, but there's been CT scans. They said my prostate was normal size, and then and they were like, and you end up arguing with the doctor because I'm like, well, are you suspicious of the prostate? And they're like, yes, because they're not finding anything else, and I'm going, well, you know, it just it's maddening because then I'm like, okay, well, you know, because they had done the cystoscopy, and, um, and after that they said your bladder's normal, and it's like pretty much they did it to rule out cancer because there's always blood in my urine,
Mm.
and
So
pretty
it's
much
fine to their
off that they
standards. So
just
with
said your bladder's normal, you're good, like there's no cancer in there, so they just like released me, like we don't need to see you again.
right, it's good to their standards because of course they don't know what they're looking for now, and for everything that they do know, there's
Right. So,
nothing here,
and
right?
they were right to make sure that I didn't have cancer, like
Oh, of
bladder
course,
cancer.
but at the same time, it doesn't necessarily rule out that there's still an entity that needs to be addressed, and that okay, it wasn't what you're looking for, but send me a referral to maybe who you think it could be or what department you think it could be, so we can rule out another department. And if you rule out department by department, then eventually you'll have to run into your answer because after that there's no departments. Like, you know what I mean? So your answer's within one of the departments, but whose department are you? And that's what we don't know when we're advocating for
Right,
ourselves, because
right.
we don't know what disease it is that we're even looking for, because I don't know medical or science. So now we start to self educate. We start to try to figure out as many things about all these diseases that it could be. And then we rule out, and then we find a doctor, and all of a sudden we stumble upon it. Finally, after all of these dictionary, Googling, YouTube video, like, you know what I mean? So,
Like reading books, and
yeah, we
I
took some.
never wanted to kind of like be an expert on this or what. Not
Yeah,
really an expert, but like being like well read. Like
right.
I didn't even know what IC was.
This wasn't what
Um,
I dreamed for myself. To be an expert in these rare diseases. That's not. I wouldn't even. No, I would never thought that. I feel you. Yeah, yeah. I feel.
right, like in rare diseases. I want to add that I what is it? I want to add that uh, somewhere along the line, I that my aunt had it, and I had came back to them and said, okay, well, my aunt has this, and um, my doctor had talked with his colleague, and then they came back to me and said, well, like only women get this. They
They
said
literally said
mostly
that to
women
you.
get this.
Oh
Yes.
my god.
You know what I mean? So I mean I'm telling you that this is the reason that has motivated me. Even though it's embarrassing, and even though this is a painful and embarrassing condition, but like I feel compelled to come forward because I know like a lot of other men with our kind of pride we have, they're not going to.
Yes, you're
When
the
they get
first.
dismissed, they're just gonna,
You're the first one that has been willing to come forth with me and identify. Now, I had, I think, a second person, but they disappeared on me, and I don't know where they went. But you're the only one that is willing, and I thank you for that because your testimony is so important to get out there. Um, over time, I hope that more men become comfortable with this because the more that we realize it's this big of an issue, and the more men that go to the doctor to get diagnosed after hearing maybe this and thinking, "Oh, that's what I have. I've been trying to figure it out." They're like in the middle of their searching and googling now, like
right,
hopefully.
that they need to get out there and advocate for themselves. And I want to add that when you advocate for yourself, you are advocating for others. And that's something to bear in mind. So I do have a duty to advocate, and I'm never going to stop advocating for people that suffer with this. People kill themselves over this disease, and it's happened.
Yes, and a lot of them are actually the more of the men because of their pride that they it's so hard to set aside during these trials and tribulations in life. um that it's hard. And
Males have like triple the amount of suicide. So a lot of them that it should have been an IC diagnosis, it just made another like male suicide statistic. I would wager.
I would wager that as well, because this is very hard to deal with, and the amount of things you go through physically, and like just even with a female, it's easier. We can put a pad on when we have retention or it's leaking or bladder leakage. Men just can't put a pad on, and who at this
Well, like
age
I wear like pull-ups, honestly, like, but
that
like it's kind of like they see a man going through the store buying like a pack of pull-ups. It's not the same as just a woman going through and buy pads. They're just like, okay,
right.
whatever.
Women do buy pull-ups too with this disease, but at the same time, if we could choose a pad to try to make it look normal, we have those options, to try to diversify the issue and try to hide it. But there's really no hiding. There's no, I mean, it is what it is. And then not only that, but how many times a day you got to change your clothes? Like women, when they go to the bathroom and do that stuff, nobody really pays no mind. But when men do it, they know, like people
When men take
notice.
a lot of bathroom breaks, or they need, it's like, they're just,
Yeah, it's
they're
definitely.
like,
And
well, what's wrong with him?
so, how has been finding a job or work with this condition been for you?
Um, that's its own thing because it's like, I cut hair. My coworkers know this. They say they hear me in the bathroom, like 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 struggling, or and then sometimes like I've peed my pants. I live close to work, so like I've had to go home and literally like have to like change out everything.
Right, and bathe and do what you have to do to go back and
Yeah,
start
and
back.
and I have like I typically wear joggers, like with a pull up on underneath them, and
Okay.
they're basically looser pants that are black because I wear them black so that if like I do leak, it's not as visible, and I wear them loose because anyone that with IC knows that like everything at the hip line and everything around the pelvic area it gets bloated, it gets tender.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, because
you know,
as your bladder and stuff fills, it swells on top of that and inflames.
yeah, and I mean, I've had doctors just look at me and be like, they acknowledge, well, it is tender, that and they just basically tell the guy, tell me, and this is what men experience. I don't know, you know, maybe you slept on it wrong, whatever, and it's like no, like my stomach is huge. Like I didn't just sleep wrong or
I
have
look
a case of
pregnant. I look
indigestion.
pregnant is my famous line, and I know because I said that's not easy as a female, but that's how I look when it's swollen. Like my bladder looks like it's a baby in there, and I look pregnant. And if yesterday I
Right,
didn't, and today I do, that's not normal. Like if I'm fat from food or whatever, or this or that, then okay, I'm fat. But there's days where I'm skinny, and then there's days when I'm fat, and it's like, oh, I'm 6 months pregnant today. I'm 0 months pregnant today. Oh, I'm 9 months. Oh shoot. Okay, we gotta figure out what's going on. Like as your stomach is bloating and bloating and bloating, it just continues to look pregnant and pregnant and pregnanter. If so, yes,
right, and it gets huge. Like the rest of my body's thin, and like I'm like, come on,
just
you
the
know.
stomach, just and like your arms and legs, correct? Like so, yeah. That's very hard to deal with, especially with the clothes, because like I constantly as well have to change out my clothes or wear jogging pants more than jeans, because I only fit jeans at a certain time, or it depends on if I have a flare today or not. Could I put those jeans on? They fit me yesterday, but today, no. So yeah, like I relate fully. So at this point, do you have a good support system?
My family, I mean, they try to be supportive, but honestly, like I said, I'm in like a lot of online forum like support groups because um like I said before, like like I call them normies, but like normal people that don't have this condition can't fathom,
Mm-hmm.
what we go through. They just, they don't get it that we've had to totally stop drinking coffee, you know, that we can't eat certain things. They or will pay so dearly for it. They don't get that the upsets that this causes, that a lot of people that do have severe IC get disability. Like they apply for it and they get it. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that's how bad
True.
it can be.
True. Do you ever cheat on your IC diet? I know I do.
Sometimes I do, but like a lot of times I pay for it. I do have the gene that from my aunt. My mom has celiacs. My aunt has celiacs, and my niece had celiac so bad that her appendix had burst, and she needed emergency surgery, and barely survived. Um,
Lord.
so I'm discovering that maybe I have the gene that's sensitive to gluten,
Okay.
to wheat.
Have you ever had an endoscopy?
What's an endoscopy?
Is like so they go down your throat with a camera, and then they also do like a colonoscopy where they go up your butt with the camera. There's A or B, but an endoscopy goes down into your stomach, and if you do an endoscopy you can tell if you have celiac disease or not, and if you have an allergic reaction to uh the stuff that celiac people are allergic to. I just had a brain fart. But yes, you know what I'm talking about, the stuff that's in pasta and all that. What is it called? um
It's basically wheat or gluten.
Yeah, gluten. That's what I
Gluten
was looking for. Gluten.
sensitivity.
So if you have a gluten sensitivity, an endoscopy can tell you. They just do a small little biopsy with a camera down your stomach, and you go to sleep, and it's simple. It's same day procedure. You go in, you have it, and you go home the same day you have it. And
I mean,
you'll
but with I haven't had it done, but it seems like for every procedure, I have to somehow, justify that it's warranted.
Well, if you're having reactions to it, you go to your gastrointestinal specialist and you let him know what you feel. You let him know about your family history, and then he'll determine whether he wants to do one on you or not, or whether he wants to do certain blood tests first or what. But a gastrointestinal specialist is where you should start, because if you've noticed there is a sensitivity, the sooner you catch that, the better, because there is longer term consequences, and you already have issues in that area that I wouldn't want to see you develop more. And it wouldn't hurt to go to a gastrointestinal specialist and get their opinion. And if they so choose to, it's like literally no recovery. Like your throat hurts for a couple days, and that's about it. And with COVID, you
Okay.
because of your throat is more open, you're obviously going to want to eliminate more contact with those people a few more days because your throat is open. But it's not necessarily open, you know what I mean? But it's sore because they went in and they took a biopsy, so you're technically open somewhere within. But it's not painful. You
That
don't
makes
feel anything.
sense.
I've had
I
them.
just barely got referred to gastro, so but I'll have to tell them my family
You
history and see what they
should.
say.
You should, because that was one of the first things before getting diagnosed with gastroparesis or GP. We did test for the celiac, and we did think celiac, and we did do that, and then my daughter as well. So it's important to know your family history and genes, and to know those things, because that is makes it easier to narrow down a possible diagnosis. Plus, in the process of rolling out, you should always roll out genetic diseases that people are having before. And not saying that those are genetic ones, but when family has certain diseases, sometimes we don't link them to be genetic, but just coincidentally, somehow some are, and we just don't fully realize how yet. So just making sure that we rule out family diseases before going on a massive dictionary search is always more simplifier. It's simple, simplify it. So it's good to know your family history. That's why they ask you that most of the time in the forms when you first become a new patient at places, because when something comes up, they'll revert back to your family history upon process and elimination for ruling out certain things.
Right, right.
So yeah.
And that's going to be important on this journey. It's been one heck of a wild ride, I'll tell you. Um, um, and and it's weird. I don't know about you. I know you have kids and stuff, but uh, like uh, for me, like I don't worry as much. Like people, I hear them worried about COVID and they're worried about dying, but like personally, I worry about like how much longer do I have of this suffering, basically. It's not really that I want to die, but it's like I just don't want to. I worry a lot about, how long, is my suffering going to be prolonged?
And I feel so horrible that that's your thought right now, because I feel for you. And I definitely hope that you could see your specialist in regards to surgeries for your bladder, because I feel that will help you in so many ways. And if you figure out that celiac issue or not, because maybe part of your suffering is more than one disease, but you're just crossing it all off as one. And I definitely think
Right.
that your bladder has nothing to do with the solids that you consume. So if you're noticing issues and an agitation with the solids, and you're noticing IBS symptoms like you talked about or things like that, you should seek medical treatment with your gastrointestinal specialist. And your bladder specialist, you should seek medical treatment in regards to how you feel about your bladder mentally, because that's important. And if you can seek surgery, ask them, is there options for surgery? Maybe you've never asked about surgery and it's not an absolute must, but when you're getting to a point with a disease after so long, it becomes an option. So, because you've tried all these other forms of treatment, surgery should cover, like medical insurance should cover your surgeries, because you've already done the process of elimination by trying the catheters, by trying the medications, by doing this. You've done like your guinea pig rounds that you now should qualify, if that makes sense. I know like the way I talk is crazy sometimes, but
No,
you
it
know,
makes sense
as
to
it
me. It's almost like a detective or the police. I found like they're trying to find like a case of who done it or the culprit.
it
Uh,
could be, but what I've come to realize is it's more or less
and then
about
it's
order
just
of operation with the forms and insurance and the dollar amount and the bang. So if I could cure this with two Tylenol, an aspirin, and a heating pad, why not? If I could cure this with 3 rounds of these 12 shots that are cheaper than the surgery, then why not? Okay, you know what? She's done all that and it hasn't worked. Fine, give her the surgery. Like, you feel me? And it's more or less about,
Yeah.
well, you know what? We've made enough money. She's paid for all three services. She qualifies for a golden ticket. Surgery.
Right. I
And
mean,
that's
I'm
how
going to
I.
physical therapy right now, so but like I hear you, like it's a process of elimination where they scratch off, like, does this help?
Yeah, at what stage and how
Is it
bad and how
this?
chronic is it? And does it deemed necessary? The only way it's deemed necessary is if he's done the order of operation, which is program A, B, and C, possibly, whatever we're providing under those content. And then when he's done with A, B, and C, then okay, you know what? We normally sometimes say, you know what, try A again. Okay, see if he wants option C one more time. You know what? Fine, surgery.
Right, right.
Like sometimes we'll revert back again. Let's repeat A, B, and C one more time again. Let's just see if doing it over again works before we try surgery. So now we're repeating services of everything twice. Yay. So instead of 1 year, it's 2 years of guinea pig service. And now we qualify.
And now we qualify. So it really is a long process, and it's
But
frustrating.
it's where you
Um,
self advocate. So now that you understand that order of operation and you understand that, you change that. How do you change that? By being using your voice to the advantage. Instead of when you're going in, like, what we cry about and what we why me about is so important, because when we're in there, what we need to be crying about is why me and why I can't have surgery. And I know years of me
right.
saying that and years of me expressing that is what got me that before my due time. And that's what's helped me every time is I've done, and being an advocate of yourself, you can say no. I've done order of operation one time, and like I've done plan A, B, and C once. I don't want to take option A or C or any of those again. I've tried those all one time. I did it your way first. Now it's time to try mine. And if I refuse services for those options, they still have to come up with a treatment plan. And eventually, the treatment plan has rolled out all the other options that surgery is the only option. And I'm really like demanding on it because at this point, I know what my body needs. So are you going to be the person to fix me or not? And if not, then I'm sorry. My services here have gone as far as they can. I will be moving on to the next doctor. Can you refer me to someone who you think will? Like, who do you think would be good for the job if you're not? Like, because I'm going to get this done one way or another. And when they see the determination of what you're set upon, a lot of times they don't try to put you back through Reamer's A, B, C, and D options, and like they understand that you're really serious and adamant about it. If you're not crying about it, then there's nothing to be fixed. So it's kind of like even with the doctors, they don't call you and say, "Hey, do you have a fever today? I was wondering if you wanted to come in and make an appointment." No, they like, do you feel
Oh
me?
no.
So it's all about how we use our why me's and our cries to our advantage now. And if you've tried their way, don't settle for more of their way if their way isn't what's working. If you've made up your mind, like these things will help. And if you look at all of the patterns with IC, most of the people that actually had the surgeries along the way, it doesn't get rid of it all. It's not a cure, but it stops some of the severe symptoms like A, bedwetting, or B, some of the retention, or C, the pain we get every time of urinating because of the swellenness, or like there's a lot of options out there now that surgeries are, I feel like, the more effective way for IC, because most of the treatment options are just band-aid for symptoms. They're not actually curing it. There's not actually doing anything. They're just something to get a
They're
band-aid
like
over your
trying to
boo-boo.
fix a bullet hole with a band-aid,
Yeah, like yep,
is
yep.
what I'm hearing. Like,
Yeah, so they're band-aiding it, and every time they take the band-aid off, they put a new band-aid on. So the permanent fix would to be go in and get that bullet out, like go in and fix it. So to go in and do, there is no actual fix though. But when you go in, there's ways of telling like some of those tissues that are have like issues. And I'm not understanding how all of that is, but with the surgeries that I've had, I know that I've had multiple ones where they've gone in and done different things to the bladder each time they're in there. So that is important to do those things because that's like how I was able to stop those symptoms. And some of the other people that I've interviewed that has had some forms of surgeries, their current symptoms are more or less like the pressure or sometimes the pain or the burning feeling. But it's kind of like those simple things, and still they pee a lot like at night and stuff, but it's not as much as what it once was. It's like, 2 to 3 times a night versus 10 to 20 times a night. You feel me?
Right, and when I said about the urination at night, like the nocturia I'm complaining of and the dysuria, they're like, well, you know, because I've had kidney stones, they're just like, well, that can happen with kidney stones, and they're like, cut off fluids at 7 p.m. and they think that maybe for some people that does it, but like for us, it does not.
It doesn't, because your body, like, have you ever had night sweats or anything like that? Your body is at night working and it's detoxing things, and obviously fluids are in your body that need to be detoxed into your
I've
bladder.
even had them during the day where like even
Like,
though I put on deodorant and my armpits are leaking, like
yeah, because your body
there's
is,
like sweat patches under my arms.
yep, your body's constantly trying to absorb and leak these fluids. And there's no, like, the night sweats are something I still have at times, and that's how I know, like, my bladder. And I'll pay attention to when I'm drinking a lot. I'll pay attention to the color of my urines, and I notice if I keep like a clear urine, more of a clear color, then my symptoms are a lot less. But the more darker colored it goes, the more pain and retention, and I'm using it 100 times versus like less. Because, like, if you feel me, and I'll hold my pee for the first one, and I'll wait till the second one and go, and then I'll be able to go like enough for both, if that made sense for like your measurements.
Like how much did you go?
So, like, if I was able to go 25% the first time, if I was to hold my pee when I know I really have to go, sometimes I'll hold it for a little while, and then I'm able to go like 50%, which would be like normally, which would be like two, because normally I'm able to do like 25% on a regular every time. But it'll take me like 4 or 5 pees before I have my full bladder empty. So, like, if I was to get an
Oh,
ultrasound, I would have to pee like 4 times before my bladder's empty. So it's about 25% each time I'm actually going. So what I consider my normal amount is actually 25%.
oh wow.
So, and that's my normal amount. But I don't.
And that's your normal.
Yeah, but it's kind of like when I go, I just go more now. Like, so I'll go 4 times and then I'll know, okay, I'm good. So if I have to pee now, I'll have to pee 2 or 3 times before we actually leave, because then when we're on the road, I'm still gonna have to go. Like, so I've kind of been able to monitor and clock it
Yeah, I relate to that totally.
and know,
You
like,
know,
my body's usage. Like, I sound crazy saying it all out loud like that. I don't think I've ever said all that out loud. But yeah. So with all of that though, I've learned that. So, like, I know that I have to, like, before we go on a road trip, I have to pee at least 4 times. So I should pee now, pee while I'm packing my stuff, pee again when we're done packing my stuff, sit down for a minute, and then pee before we actually leave the house. And I'm good to go.
and like I told you, I'm a barber, so a lot of times I'm leaving the customer in the chair because of the nature of the work I do. Like I have to, like in order to pee. Like if I can feel like it's like if it's that bad where I'm like if I don't, like I'm gonna like pee myself where I stand,
Yeah.
But I've brought a note from my doctor saying that I have this issue and that I have to take more bathroom breaks, um, because of it.
Yes, I've had to do that as well.
You know,
So at this point, what is your current
because
Oh no, go ahead.
what were you gonna
I was
ask
gonna
me?
ask you, what is your current treatment plan for IC currently? Like, what are you currently doing to help yourself now?
I'm doing the physical therapy. Um, I'm doing pelvic floor therapy. I do yoga at home. I take marshmallow root. I take Valium, not the pills, but the suppositories. I take like I have like a basically a thing of pills of marshmallow root,
I hear good things
milk
about marshmallow
thistle,
roux.
corn silk.
I hear really good things about marshmallow roux. A couple of the other IC girls that were on previously spoke about marshmallow roux. I haven't personally ever tried it. I've thought about it, but then I'm also fearful to add it because of my other medical issues. I just don't know how it plays in the body as a whole because I don't know anything about it.
Well, and some people here I have kidney stones, and they're like, just drink some lemon water, and the thing that really is horrible is like I can't have lemon water, like I can't have citrus.
Mm. I hate not being able to have nothing with
You,
lemon in
you,
it.
you know, because like citrus will cause me to have a flare. Uh, you know,
They don't
so I can't
understand.
have this. But it would be good for the kidneys, like, but bad for the bladder.
Catch
It's kind of
22.
like cranberry juice. Like a lot of people will tell you to drink cranberry juice.
Oh
Like ice
no.
ears can't have cranberry
That will hurt
juice.
us to all levels. Cranberry juice is not for us. And for those of us with
This isn't a UTI.
no, it's the complete opposite. And if you treat it like a UTI, you're gonna even get worse, and then you're gonna really think you have a UTI. Like your flare is gonna be
Right.
on flare. You're gonna go from 10 to 100 real fast if you're trying to treat this with a UTI the natural holistic ways. That is no for you. And honestly, coffee for me, I cheat and I still have my coffee, but I've noticed literally over the last year and a half, I can't finish my cup of coffee, and my cup of coffee has just been more or less a designer thing for me, like keeping it here. I like a binky.
Yeah.
I'll drink like some of it 25%, but that and it'll take me 3 4 hours to drink that boy down. But I can never drink a full cup of coffee. I can never drink the
Like
full.
full cup of coffee.
Yes, but I
And,
still
and do
I
you
can't
do
give it
you use
up.
aloe vera?
No, I haven't done most of the holistic things lately. I've been on a full just working hardcore and breaking all the rules. I need to stop. But I've been breaking all the rules to everything right now. I've been like too busy to follow rules. But I need to get the wintertime is coming, and the wintertime the coldness makes my bladder like flare worse because of how cold it is. It shocks those nerves, and when those nerves are shocked, they don't like it.
Same here.
And I'm like, oh my
Yeah,
god,
I
why?
noticed right away a shock with the and a flare, came with the cold weather
So
onset right in October.
if you notice that, have you ever done the rice sack treatment?
No, what is that?
Oh my god, I tell everybody I love a rice sack. So you take white rice from the kitchen, you put it in a sack. You could put essential oil if you so choose, whatever flavor you want to smell, but it's just for a smell. You don't need it. And you lay that boy flat in the microwave. Make sure it's all flat, not crunched up after you tie a knot on the sack. And you microwave that boy for 1 to 2 minutes, depending on how big that sock is. If it's a big sock like yours and a man's, and you're using the full bag of rice, then definitely 2 minutes, like 1 minute to a minute and a half. If it's bigger and you're
Yeah.
using more than one regular bag, you're using one of them big bags, you can do 2 minutes or like 2.5. But you don't want to burn it. You got to keep an eye. And that boy gets so hot. It gets hotter than a heating pad that I was able. So with endometriosis and adenomyosis, it literally takes you to the floor on top of everything else. So like, and then it pushes and hurts your bladder because your uterus and all these other organs are swollen on top of that already being swollen.
Oh my
So
god.
you got like 10 times the amount of swollenness. And they would give me every pain pill in the book, and literally they wouldn't do anything. But I would put that rice sock on when I discovered that, and oh my god, it was heaven. I
Well,
literally,
how do you get it hot?
you
And it
microwave it.
helps?
Yes, it gets hotter than so. The only way to stop pain from the nerve is to burn it or freeze it, and you ain't freezing it because your body does not want to deal with that numbness being your skin and the coldness. Like that's not good. It's not going to be enough numbness. It's not like numbing a boo boo. It's a lot deeper than that. so that it's going to need a deeper numb. Ice will not do it. So obviously we're left with heat. Well, a heating pad works, but a heating pad only gets so hot to so many degrees that you can't actually get it deep enough. Like if I could cram that heating pad up in my stomach, I would. Like, you know what I mean? Like, just go on in there, through the belly button, go on, and come back later. Like, you know, but you can't. So the way that I get to those nerves that I'm trying to reach and I can feel is with the rice sock. It gets hotter to a hotter degree than the heating pad. It takes longer to like cool down. So before I go to bed, I'll put it on and I'll heat it up to how far I want, and then I'll put it on my wherever I'm hurting at, whether it's my uterus, my bladder, my kidney, my whatever is hurting me. And I'll put it there and it'll stop hurting. And then over time, and then eventually the pain is gone, and then I'll get up and realize the sock isn't hot no more, or I'll flip it to like hotter parts and like move it around a little bit. And then I'll get up because now I'm lazy and microwave it again. And then by the second one, I'm definitely good to go. And I have not taken a single pill for any type of pain or any type of anything in like I don't even know how many years. I want to say like maybe 8 years, maybe longer.
Oh wow.
Maybe about 8 years. But I am a
because I know a lot
cannabis.
of advisors take Narcos.
Yes, I was on a regular that the doctor gave me, and the doctor even gave me liquid Vicodin in a liquid form that you like taking the inject in you. And I was getting I was getting Marvicaine on a regular in my bladder 3 times a week. I was getting Narcos on a regular. I was getting Darvocet if I needed it. I was getting morphine if you needed it, like whatever you need, honey. And I was like, okay, I'm in pain, so it helped. But then eventually I realized when I'm not in pain, like I still have to get up and function. I have 2 children. I have to clean the house. I have to cook dinner. Like I can't now after the pain, the medication you gave me put me to flipping sleep. Yeah, I'm not in pain, but I'm asleep. Like when am I gonna wake up? Like I have stuff to do. The kids are running around. Like, what am I gonna do? So I literally got off of that and I found cannabis, and cannabis is what led me into not wanting to be on any form of pain medicine. And then I also discovered issues with my kidneys, and then later the kidney disease came forth after a surgery gone wrong. So I really wasn't going to do any pain medications, not even as needed, or not even like if it got real bad. Just no, like there's not a single aspirin, Tylenol, Aleve, Advil, nothing. I cannot take a single anything, because so at this point I'm left with the rice sock, and I'm perfectly happy with that, and cannabis has helped me a lot with the pain. But there are just things that no matter how much pot you have, it's not gonna get rid of that amount of pain. So
Right.
at that point, the rice sock has literally been even before pot. I've found the rice sock, and the rice sock
Do
is
you
there.
get lower back pain?
Oh yes, but and I also so I had from the endometriosis, they gave me these shots that shut down my ovaries that later gave me osteoporosis in my bones, and I later broke bones like my back in multiple spots. Didn't know, was up and moving, never even knew I broke my back, couldn't feel it. My teeth, I have a broken tooth right now that just broke like maybe 5 or 6 months ago. I don't have no feeling in it. There's no nerve pain. It don't hurt. I don't feel a hot or cold. None of it hurts. You can touch it. Like it doesn't hurt. Nothing. I don't feel certain levels of pain. But then I feel so many levels of other pain that I just don't understand how that's even possible. Like how can you feel this pain but not that pain? You know what I mean? Like it doesn't.
Yeah, and it's difficult to describe. I found it's difficult to describe to your doctors. Well, like, where are you feeling? Like, how are you feeling the pain?
Yes.
And then she, like, they'll do like tests, like she did, like on my lower back, like hitting it a little bit, and I'm like, that really doesn't hurt, but it's just like this dull ache that just gets worse and like, and is just there. Like it's weird.
Yes, I crack my body every day and like in multiple ways. And then my husband, all night long, I find myself constantly like, I feel like in the middle of my back, there's like a main artery or nerve or something. And whenever I crack and I hit right there, that's when everything feels better. But I have to literally do this huge like corkscrew turn and in order to get it to crack. And then once I do, I'm fine. But until it cracks, I got this pressure, I got this pain, sometimes this numbness, this tingleness that goes down and runs to different spots. and then the bladder, and it like runs right to the bladder, and then at the bladder, now my bladder is on fire or hurting or
I bet it
tingling.
signals it to flare and burn. And then like this only happened one time, but my bladder, like, it was having this burning like I couldn't believe. And I urinated out this stuff that only looked like coagulated blood. I had azo in my pee too, but it basically wasn't solid, but like it came out for 3 urinations, and it was just this long strip of, like, I don't know what it looked like, coagulated blood
Like the bladder wall.
or bladder lining.
Like the bladder lining or wall. You said it was thickening. It has to shed. And it does have to come out. And if you're not urinating enough, it's built up and sat up in the bladder wall, and now it has to release. But for you, you're a male, so you're gonna notice and feel that a lot more extreme than what a female would. A female would see it in the toilet and know that her bladder's acting up. But as a male, I don't really know how that would work until you just said it. But that's what you're describing to
I
me.
was just like, oh my god, like, and for 3 times that I peed, this like stuff came out of me that was just all red and like long. It looked like a little snake. Like,
Yeah,
I can't
almost.
explain
Yeah,
it. Like,
that's the bladder wall. It sounds like a shedding because it's an actual layer, like a wall, almost like a, it just lines. It's a lining. So imagine taking like the lining like a balloon and popping it and having all these pieces go all over your bladder, and then every time you pee, trying to squeeze a piece of that balloon out. You know, that's
I
kind
was
of
like,
what it is.
and then you just see this red coming out of your pee, and it made like a long snake in the toilet. Like, I couldn't believe it. Like, I was like, what the hell's happening to me? My bladder feels like it needs Tums.
Yeah,
And
because your bladder now has no wall protecting it, so everything that goes in is gonna hurt. And I've noticed when the air hits my bladder wall and it's empty is when it hurts even more. Sometimes when it's full, it feels so much better, so I don't want to empty it because it feels better full than when empty and burning and hurting when the air is hitting it. Like I'm like, oh no, that hurts.
yeah,
So those are the way I describe it. I don't know how, like, that's just the things that come to my mind when I'm dealing with IC, that how I describe the diseases, because that's all I can like describe is how it that's how it feels. Like it's
and
on
I
fire.
told my doctors, and that this happened, and they were, and my doctor in the past was like, oh, okay, like, but like, I didn't feel like that ever really got addressed. That I was like, because like, as a male, especially, I'm like, no, like, that is not cool. Like,
Right. I
like that
fully
that
I
is
fully
not
get that,
normal
and the
to.
fear and the anxiety that comes with all of that. So how did um like recently with all of that, how has everything intertwined now? Like, is all of that an issue now? Is that not an issue now? Are you currently having any of those issues?
I don't have the. I mean, there's always like, when I go in and they're like, okay, let us get a urine. Yeah, there's traces of blood. Um, but there hasn't been like visible blood anymore in my urine.
Well, that's good news because that's
And but
signs.
they're just, and in the past they were like, okay, well, you had, and they wanted to look at the prostate again, and uh, you know I was like, but you've looked at my prostate before, and they were like, yeah, but that was a long time ago. And I was like, I've had like urinary like issues like a long time before that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it sounds like they were waiting for. So, sounds like maybe they were thinking that an issue was gonna develop, but they're just too early. And maybe if we come back later, like 6 months or a year, it'll be now we can catch it. And they were trying to catch what they were thinking was going to be there, but when the lab work wasn't saying it's not there yet, then they're back confused. Um, Definitely. But it sounds like they were just uneducated on what IC really is and how you would deal with it and how you address it and what are the options.
And
So at this,
unfortunately, like a lot of doctors, like, that's the case. There's a part of me that wants to move to Washington, because like over there, they say it's the opposite. Like the doctors are over there fighting over patients a lot.
And where at?
In like Washington.
Oh, okay. Well, I know that in Europe and Canada, there's a lot of like leading medications right now that are helping, and lead like other treatment plans that are helping. And some doctors even prescribe the medication and tell you to order it, and then they manage your treatment on the medication here, but they just can't prescribe it. But a doctor can oversee you on whatever you're choosing to take at home, whether it's vitamin D, whether it's an energy booster from GNC or something, or you can take those things to your doctor and ask them to oversee your treatment or care on them, and they can. So it's the same stipulation and guidelines as like that, I believe. But a lot of these doctors are
Okay.
using oversee medications now for GP and IC, because GP and IC both came out around the same time, and they were both discovered around the same time. So both of these two
Are they
diseases.
like a pairing couple almost a lot of
No,
times? Like I see.
they are
No.
not, but I am finding that there are a few patients, just a small few, that actually do. And I do believe that there is a vagus nerve connection, but I don't know what that is at this point, because most of the diseases that I feel that the people are like have long term wise are vagus nerve related, or most of the other diseases that are connected like are with the vagus nerve, like in ways. And that's the nerve, I believe, that is like causing a lot of the issues. And when like one thing flares, they all flare, because that nerve is so big, and that nerve literally connects to so much of the body, which is why your the standard of living goes from what it used to be to what it is now, and why we're so unhappy with the way of living, because the way of living is not.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you about, I know we spoke about your support system being social media and things, but I wanted to ask, is there somebody you want to give like a shout out to or a thank you to in regards to how supportive they've been, in case they are going to listen to this or will listen?
Um. Yeah. You know. Really, to my parents, they. You know, and my mom and dad. Um. And and definitely to there's a group where they actually made me a moderator there, and they've been like really good and really loving to me and really supportive, and have really let me know how loved I am. And it's been a lot of the reason why I'm still here talking to you, because like I have been suicidal about this. Like I'm not gonna lie, but um, you know, because I don't want to be a deserter for fellow ICers. You know, I'm not quote unquote leaving the battlefield. I don't feel the battle is over. We haven't advocated nearly enough. There isn't enough specialists. There isn't enough funding and research, I'm gonna advocate, for the rest of my life on this.
I would love to see you advocate and continue to advocate with you, or help you join you in advocating, or
Um,
come up with
and
a
her name is
cause to help.
Crystal of that group that I'm.
Okay, what's the name of
And
the group
yeah,
for anybody that wants to
I'd love to
join?
advocate with you, because this just, it isn't going to go away. There isn't a magic wand, you know, until we address it or get in remission. It's just, it's not over.
It's definitely
The
not, and you're absolutely right. And the fact that within the last 10 years we even got the name of the disease discovered, you can only imagine what the next 50 years even holds in science for us and the disease itself, as science continues to evolve on a regular. And they're literally under studying genetics now like no other. So if genetics is the cause, that answer shall be cracked soon, I feel. And if genetics is not the cause at times, then I'm sure the other answer isn't that far away, and it's in the bacteria area. and they're studying so many different new bacterias and ancient bacterias and old bacterias now. Like, I do believe that within the next 5 to 10 years that the science from our childhood to our grandchildren's childhood is definitely going to be completely different.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Like,
and we need to evolve on this, and definitely, like I would say, like people need a awareness um about the disease because there's people that'll cut ahead of like you in the restroom in line. It's like no, and they'd be like, well, you're an adult, you can hold it, and they don't get that, like they just don't get what we go through, and we can't
right.
always just you know
And not every adult that looks like they're standing here in the bathroom line healthy is. So to assume that I'm
right.
not
It's an
handicapped in any
invisible
way,
illness.
yes, it's an invisible illness. I totally agree with you, Luke, and I
And the
definitely,
kidney issues are secondary, I think, just from the pressure, because there's always so much pressure on my urinary tract.
I would love
I
to
can
find
feel it.
out if the kidney disease is definitely more related to that, because I feel like you're onto something there, and I feel like science may catch up to us with that. But it's going to be about getting enough of us that actually have kidney disease with IC to come forth and do like a poll. So if what is the name of that group that Crystal runs? If that group would like to run a poll and kind of help get some numbers going there, we would definitely I would definitely like to shine some more light to see if there is enough people out there to say that there's definitely a pattern. Because kidney disease,
I can send you an invite to the group,
I would love that. And what's the name of it so
and
other
and,
people
and you
that can
can
join?
put the poll up there.
Oh,
Um,
awesome. I would love to do that. So what's
let's
the
see.
name too so other people can follow? Because we're also live on other platforms. So if someone out
Oh,
there
okay.
is listening and wants to follow that group or join, it's on Facebook and the name is,
The name is Interstitial Cystitis Support Group for Patients and Loved Ones.
I may already be in that. I'm not sure. I'm in a lot of them, but I'll have to check. But definitely I would love to get more involved for sure. So I
So,
appreciate
so that
you.
group again is Interstitial Cystitis Support for Patients and Loved Ones,
Yes. So join there if you guys are interested.
created
That's
by
on
Crystal Rain,
Crystal Rain, and that's on Facebook for those of you
and it's
interested.
on Facebook.
Definitely. I appreciate you bringing awareness and shining light to this, and I definitely want to follow your journey more in the future and see where things go as science grows with you and see how we're able to hopefully get you on a better route. I hope that you can get your celiac possibly looked at and see if it is that, and or possibly have something for the bladder surgery wise to give you some relief, because you really need some relief. I can feel it and hear it and sense it in your voice, and I am so happy for the changes that you've already made mentally with the issue. But now it's time to address those physical for sure. And I would love to follow that journey and see how those go and share with the audience more in the future if you're interested.
Yeah, yeah, I'd love to be back on again
Well, perfect. That's a
in
plan.
in the future.
That's a plan. And we have a chat room on Relevant where you can go live or I can go live or other people, where I'm live now at. And so are you with this podcast. But you can go live in there, ask questions, you can talk, or you can just type in questions, you can private message. It's similar to Facebook, but Relevant is a new uprising platform I've been choosing just because of some of my cannabis related issues. Facebook's been putting me in a lot of jail lately, and I literally like the futures that Relevant offers compared to Facebook. It's more of like audio podcast is for lives instead of video. So when you're live, it's not a video. I'm more audio friendly than video friendly because of all of my diseases. I don't have time to be camera ready all the time, but I do have time to be
Right.
audio ready. Like, I'm not gonna go on air with my hair messed up, but I'll do an audio podcast with a ponytail. Like, you know what I mean? So the difference is so much
And
different.
yeah, and an audio podcast is absolutely fun. You know,
I love
it's
it.
just like in the old day, like a radio show where, you know.
Yeah, and that's exactly the vibe it is. And each room is kind of their own vibe. And I've got Sprinkle for Some Love with a Cause over there, so you should definitely join. And then check out the YouTube channel. This will air there, and on iHeartRadio, Spotify, many other platforms. Anywhere you can find a podcast, you'll find this one aired.
Oh, okay. Yeah, on what podcast?
I'll send you some links when we're off the air. But at this
Okay.
point, I appreciate you coming on, and I look forward to you coming on next time.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you so much, Luke. Enjoy your night, everyone. Bye.
Enjoy your night.
Bye.
Have a good evening.
You too.
Okay. Bye.